Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra. Now, in 1975, Nigeria helped build something. 15 countries, one region, one idea that West Africa would be stronger united than divided. Free movement, shared markets, shared security, and it was called ECOWAS. 50 years later, Mali has left, Burkina Faso has left, Niger has left. 3 of our neighbors packed their bags, formed their own alliance, and walked out the door we helped build. And the honest question is not, why did they leave? The question is, did we even notice the relationship was falling apart before the headline told us? Because after the coup in Niger, ECOWAS imposed sweeping sanctions to pressure the military junta to restore constitutional order. As the region's largest economy and a key electricity supplier, Nigeria suspended electricity exports to Niger as part of those measures. Electricity to a neighbor. Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso didn't simply reject a policy. Their military leaders and many of their citizens came to reject what they believed ECOWAS had become. Trust doesn't erode in a single announcement. It erodes in 100 small moments where a neighbor feels punished instead of partnered. But here's what nobody wants to say out loud. That rupture didn't begin in a boardroom in Abuja, no. It started years earlier in villages along shared borders, where insecurity spread faster than regional cooperation could respond. It grew as citizens in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso watched their own governments struggle to protect them and watched ECOWAS show up only after the coups, with sanctions and not support. Ask a trader at that border what regional cooperation means to him. Ask a family split across it. It was never an abstract diplomatic idea to them. It was whether they could move, trade, and live safely every single day. Too often we, manage West Africa from the top down, communiques, summits, deadlines. But what holds neighbors together isn't another statement after a crisis. It's whether ordinary people feel the partnership actually makes their lives safer, easier, and more prosperous. By the time we're debating an exit, we've already lost the plot. The shared roads, the shared markets, the shared trust, those disappear first. But wait, where is the political will? Not theater performance, but the kind that shows up for a neighbor before their government begins to unravel. Niger's stability affects Nigeria's stability. A fractured Sahel rarely stays in the Sahel. We cannot lead a region we've stopped listening to. And it's difficult to preach regional unity when we're still struggling to build trust within our communities and institutions. A country that loses focus on the little things at home will almost always lose sight of the bigger picture abroad. I'm not here to give you another reason to feel hopeless. Trust me, you have enough of those. I'm here to say this. Relationships between neighbors, between brothers, between people are not maintained by grand gestures. They are maintained daily, quietly, in the unglamorous, often unseen work of actually showing up. ECOWAS didn't fracture in one summit, and whatever unity is left in this region, in this country, won't be rebuilt in one either. 3 countries left the table we helped build 50 years ago. The question isn't simply whether they will return. It's whether we've learned that unity was never built in conference halls alone. It begins with your neighbor next door. So I say again, good morning, neighbor, and welcome to Breakfast Extra. I am Queen Celestine, and my neighbor this morning is Mazino up here.
Hello, Celestine. Aren't I your neighbor almost every morning?
Yes, you are. Mostly on weekends.
Very interesting monologue there, and very interesting pointed statement regarding how much trade and also I think relationships matter, and how the other West African countries actually contributed to the instance we see
yes.
the regression to military rule in these three countries that have left ECOWAS. Well, maybe when you get here, we can talk more about that.
Let me get an Uber. I'm coming to you.
Cool.
Good morning.
Well, good morning again and welcome to Breakfast Extra. My name is Mazino Appeal. Now, today we begin with the tragic boat accident in Jigawa State that has once again raised concerns about safety on Nigeria's waterways. We'll also discuss the growing challenge of illegal online gambling in Nigeria as authorities intensify efforts to regulate the industry and protect consumers and also curb the activities of unlicensed betting operators. And as conversations around the 2026 budget continues, we'll look at the government's spending priorities and ask whether public resources are being directed to the areas that matter most to Nigerians, because from what we hear, they're spending it on churches and palaces. Now, in our final hour, we'll turn to the digital economy, where President Bola Tinubu moves to regulate Nigeria's crypto market and is expected to reshape the country's digital asset space. And a focus on Africa, we examine Nigeria's growing partnership with Germany, exploring new opportunities in trade, investment, technology, and also energy, and what they could mean for economic growth. So do stay with us through the course of this show for the next 3 hours. It's great conversations coming your way on Breakfast Extra. First conversation between I and Queen, by the way. Let's talk about that monologue and what used to be ECOWAS and how, first off, let me talk about the borders. Most people don't know about Nigerian borders with these countries, especially as you breach into the Sahel. It's a very interesting place. And for most part, most people would say very ungoverned. There's no governance there. People just, you can't even tell the differences sometimes between Nigeria and Niger, or these are the countries that we're bordered with. And that there is the problem. It's like we expect there to be a semi-border there. It's just villages, scanty Sahara. It begins to become the Sahara. So it's very... And that there is the problem, like you highlighted inside of your monologue, the fact that ECOWAS doesn't seem to, in the past 10 years, have been holding its mandate, protection, security, and that's the big part. And then there is trade, where if we've lost our relationship when it comes to intelligence sharing during times of, these violent attacks and stuff like that, then we could also still have our relationship based on trade. But we can't do that. And that's the reason why, for the most part, they left the bloc, because they want to savor economic ties with their colonial masters who benefit from their resources. We can take advantage of that. But the problem now is that they're military, we're democratic, that relationship is strained, but we still have to, because, hey, whether we like it or not, we share borders. I'm talking too much, but then again, security is our concern as well.
So Mazino, I agree with you in the sense that even, going back to just, look at what is happening, I feel like we always miss the point. The point is to move the country forward. The point is to move the citizens forward. So I feel like now it makes sense when you say the reason we did not have unnecessary borders is because we're supposed to be one, where we're sharing our markets. You could stand in the middle and say, well,
it's physically impossible anyway to have borders across the Sahara.
Exactly.
Very.
So the fact that we've had different leaders over time, and it's like everything is always changing, and we're losing the history and the focus of why that group was created in the first place. Now you see insecurity in Nigeria, and the next thing they say, oh, our borders are open. We can't.
And it often becomes a Nigerian problem, not an ECOWAS problem.
Exactly. Because we're supposed to be fighting together, like,
You keep saying fighting. I don't agree with the word fighting. I think
when I mean fighting together, it's just the way me and you, we sit down here and, we host and, talk to.
So we're working together.
Yes.
We're relating.
And so fighting together is us aligning. Yes.
Okay.
So when I mean fighting, I mean aligning, not fighting. So aligning together because, again, it's a continent. It's not, we're not on our own. We cannot survive. The country who's giving another person electricity is dealing with electricity issue. Now we're collecting from the sun. If this
and that's the issue when it comes to relationships, because when you savor that contract, you've just put something in between you and them.
Exactly.
So we can't work together.
So now we're in a retaliatory relationship instead of being one. And I feel like we all need to sit down and figure out which summit will eventually
solve Africa's problem?
Yes.
Not the AU. They're also sleeping as well. But hey, then again, they are also at work. Let's not say that nothing is absolutely happening. We hope that the new ECOWAS chief, Faye, Diomaye Faye, will use his youthfulness and maybe help us with some innovative solutions for Africa. Tell you what, let's do the dailies next. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Now let's dive right into the headlines and the papers. We'll start with this day newspaper. Right at the center article, we will soon overcome insecurity. I beg your pardon. Article says President sees China comparison exposes Tinubu to greater scrutiny. And of course, below that, Tinubu says we will soon overcome insecurity challenges in the north. I like the soon, but it doesn't come with a date. North has stagnated due to loss of values, says Ango Abdullahi, and the Sultan seeks repentance of perpetrators of evil in Nigeria. Will they repent?
Catch your breath. Catch your breath. I know you're about to go on. There.
I will catch my breath. Let's hope that they do repent. Kwankwaso Obil will honor his one-term promise if elected in 2027.
So that seems to be touted recently as the golden goose now. Okay, one term. Well, a one-term...
but then we're trying to put a bill for 6 years.
Will it solve everything? Is that exactly the point?
I think he said 4 years is enough to fix Nigeria.
Is it, though?
So I'm wondering if it's so glaring, if it's, out there, this is what we need. How come other people are not seeing it?
It's not even the case for me. It's that what's the blueprint? What exactly do you want to do? Because we have so many...
We never know until...
Security, economy.
Until you read, sing the national anthem and like, hey!
Which national anthem? On your mandate we shall stand.
My dear.
Keep going.
And right at the top, we see in line with Tax Reform Act, Oyedele inaugurates committee to develop 2026 VAT modification order. How many committees do we have?
How many times are we going to do tax? If they're modifying it to make it better or cheaper, fine. Anything else? No.
It says the new order is to provide certainty for businesses, investors, tax administrators. At least they agree that things are not certain or cast in stone. I think that'll be all for this day newspaper.
I'll do the Vanguard next. Sunday Vanguard has this. Alleged Christian genocide. U.S. Congress move threatens food, health, jobs in Nigeria. Education security too, after $3 billion in aid. Experts. This is a diplomatic red alert. Say HIV, TB, malaria programs at risk. I think we'll have some conversation about this later. But Agri-Sokoto Highway setback confusion. It's in fine print. Let me see. Outcry as 300 houses, investments, others destroyed. We lost ancestral graves, inheritance, businesses worth billions. FG denies realignment claim. I don't know much about the Badagry-Sokoto superhighway. I am excited about these superhighways because I know what they can do for trade in Nigeria. Looking forward to the end of the Lagos-Calabar one. But regarding the Badagry-Sokoto one, maybe I need to read this article myself. And then somewhere down here we see bar and bench bombshell. About 15% of judiciary is clean. 2 women at the top should clear the rot, says Senator. And Lassa fever death toll hits 229 as fresh infections rise. Did FG pay 17.5 trillion naira in subsidy despite removal? Did they? It's called the energy expenses. I think fuel energy expenses, if I'm not mistaken. Or I can't remember exactly how it's called. But then again, it is seeming to be the same thing. When you remove subsidy and say we're only just providing some money now so that there's plenty of fuel inside of Nigeria for citizens to go about, the argument is that we're still paying subsidy whether we like it or not. Removal or no removal, we're still spending that money on fuel. That's it for the Sunday Vanguard. What next are we going to be taking now?
We'll do the Sunday Times.
Sunday Times.
Okay, right at the center, 2027, Atiku fires back at Tinubu's presidency. Ranks up $460,000. U.S. forfeiture again. There's going to be a lot of battle before this election. I can see the rest is in fine print. 106 health workers kidnapped and killed in Nigeria
In 3 years.
3 years.
Health workers, so that's a big problem. Because these are people who are supposed to be aiding with situations.
Then we're losing them. So not just to kidnapping, not just to death, but to jackway as well. It's just, it's really sad. Nigeria Customs unveiled digital file tracker to boost trade efficiency. Hope that tracker will track the fake aircraft. And right at the top, Nigeria makes history with first 3x3 basketball win at a Commonwealth game. And last but not the least, Nollywood star Chinedu Ikedieze named mental health ambassador.
Very good. Plenty of talk about mental health lately.
Yes.
Absolutely necessary. Sunday Punch is up next. Voter registration. INEC ends exercise today as opposition demands extension. Northwest loops, is that loops or lops? Tops new registration with 1.6 million. Kano, Lagos, Edo, Delta, Sokoto record high figures, and also civil society cites 6 months gap to 2027 polls. 5 governors to adopt security outfits as state police. Yay. PFIPC pro political leaders differ on Gbajabiamila's role. What exactly is his role? Maybe we should first of all define that. Drug makers' finance costs jump 47% amid high interest rates. And rising insecurity fuels NYSC deployment requests. I'm going to come back to that. And I've seen 5 families wiped out in Plateau attacks. Birom youth leader. Regarding the NYSC and insecurity, many people have started to argue that maybe it's time to simply just domicile students or participants where they schooled or what their choice is.
Because nobody wants to go to...
Nobody wants to go. But then again, let's also note that they're not reckless in their deployments. They do not send students to places with high-risk violent attacks. So that's something that we don't point out much in the media. We always want to look at this side and not focus on the fact that they are also...
But you don't send them there, but there are people living there.
Well, what about the people? Well, I don't work for the government, so I can't absolutely state.
I feel like sometimes they're losing the vision of why we had NYSC in the first place, because it feels like everything is just going upside down. Oh, we should give them 3 weeks, we should give them 2 weeks, or let him make 6 weeks. The camps are not even livable. It's, well, yes,
well, you enjoyed it though, didn't you?
I did after I left camp.
Why ruin a good thing?
After I left camp, I think camp, everybody
You're beginning to sound like Kemi Badenoch. Because they give us small cutlass, she's complaining about...
I ask anybody going to camp, the best place in camp is always Mami Markets, because that's where you're going to go and eat and chill. But you know, let's not go there. Let's move to the Tribune, please. So right at the center, battle for 2027 on page 4. Presidency, Atiku in no-holds-barred wars of words. Your U.S. petition, abdication of homegrown political responsibility, says presidency. You invoked China's standard. Let's apply it to $460K US for future, says Atiku. It's a back and forth here. And below that, premature campaigns. Who will punish these politicians floating electoral laws? Good question. They should ask the people in power. Beside it, Varsity expels 2 students for engaging in gay practice. I identify as a camera.
Why aren't you speaking with your full chest? Do you want to take that last caption? I didn't hear it.
Mazino, it's right on the screen.
Okay, let's move on.
Leave me alone. Right below. Man fakes his own funeral to escape jail for drunk driving.
That's ingenious, though. Let's take up a new identity altogether.
See, we come up with so many ideas.
I will be Zamir indeed.
It's like, well, I can change my name. That name is dead. It's gone.
But so much trouble to go just through because of what? Speeding ticket?
Drunk driving.
Drunk driving, yeah. That's plenty of...
save your life. Maybe if he goes to jail, he would recover. Not has lost its value. It is declining since Ango Abdullahi Bugeji laments. Quite sad. And bandits abduct local government chair, kill aides and policemen in Zamfara Amnesty for bandit terrorists making communities withdraw support for military. IGP never ordered police officers to shoot illegal firearm holders, says the police.
Okay, that's confusing because that was in the news and the express this directive was shoot, or maybe it wasn't the IG. I won't talk much about that. But go back to the previous one regarding communities not cooperating with security agencies.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yes, the Amnesty for bandit terrorists making communities withdraw support for the military.
So it seems like it's backfiring.
Yes.
And this is a sentimental thing. And we talked about this about 2 weeks ago, if you remember. People walking about looking at people whom they feel they're grieved by, and you. So I think that program might need a bit of rearrangement. I don't know. Redirection, perhaps.
We reintegrate them
maybe some
far from the community.
Some sort of recompense for what they have done.
Yes.
Because I think at the end of the day, that's what brings about most of the grievances. You can't get away with something as grievous as taking a person's life and, be allowed to just simply
really
waltz back into society because the government says so. Hey, it's done in many parts of the country.
Yeah.
I'm not giving an absolute take on it. I'm just saying that these might be what the people are thinking.
Yeah.
Let's do the Sunday Nation.
Well, before you go there, the last one says tributes pour in as Bamboshe, professor of linguistics, dies at 94. He did live well.
Wow, that's a good age.
Yes.
Let's move on now. The Nation Sunday. Abacha didn't die in bed with lady, says Al Mustafa. He claims to have footage of military leaders' last hours and dismisses ex-DSS director's account as a script. If there is anybody in Nigeria who would have detailed information about Abacha's death, and the only person that I will take from as credible, it will be Major Hamza Al Mustafa. I love his story. Very interesting young man while Abacha was still alive, and his responsibilities were direct from Abacha.
I think my question is, what is bringing the Abacha story out again?
I don't know. Set history straight. I think that's one thing that is missing in the annals of Nigerian history. How exactly did Abacha die? Because the stories about him dying from an apple by a lady of unscrupulous nature or origin is sensational. So let's find exactly what.
I think a lot of people have bought that story.
Yeah.
So it's like, just let the dead breathe.
It's like an Adam and Eve story.
Exactly. They would have told us from the beginning when it happened. Maybe that year. Tell us every month after that.
Information was rather economic back then.
Why is it coming out now before election?
I have not drawn any relations. I have not drawn any relations, so I wouldn't know. But where are you going with this, Queen? But there's more headlines here. Insecurity in North will soon be history, says Tinubu, as he assures. I'm betting that he's waiting for the next 4 years to solve that. That's why this is a headline. 9.2 million more eligible voters registered as INEC CVR ends. An IGP never ordered officers to shoot illegal firearm holders, say the police. The debate yesterday on the news was that this might be mistaken as an excuse to simply just let off on those bullets. And claim that people had firearms. And there are certain human rights violations that it also crosses as well, which we discussed on the news. If you want to see that, maybe you could go back on YouTube and find it. No movement restriction during Lagos Sanitation Commissioner says. Hang on a second. Yeah, this is for yesterday. And security, how insurgents are turning to drones and AI. Big discussion here on News Central almost every week. And troops engage abductors of Zamfara LG chair in gunfire. And Rescue 5, congratulations. We seem to be recording some good positives when it comes to the fight against insurgency.
Right.
That's it for the nation.
Well, I think we have one more paper.
Is it one more paper or are we done?
The Weekend Vision, do we have it?
There we go.
Yes, real quick. It says tougher guidelines for political party funding. That would be interesting if we do that here in Nigeria. But of course, below that, you see a picture of someone in Karamoja sub-region who's receiving food relief.
That's in Uganda, by the way.
Yes, it is. It's in bags. Ours is very obvious. We have, some staples that we're used to. And besides it, the good, the bad of working in South Africa. Well, from soybean vendor to a speaker. Well, from Accra to the embassy, who knows?
Oh, wow.
You never know.
Let the First Lady breathe.
Yes, she's breathing. And right at the top, how power struggles have shaken Works Ministry. Quite interesting. And I think that'll be all for the dailies. We made it through that.
Yes, we did. So do stay tuned. Let's go on a break now. When we get back, we'll be launching into our very first conversation about the Jigawa boat tragedy. We'll have Enoch join us here for a conversation about what he's discovered. Stay with us.
Now let's dive into our first big report. Another tragic boat accident has once again drawn attention to the safety of Nigeria's inland waterways. In Jigawa State, several people lost their lives while many others remain missing after a boat carrying farmers and laborers capsized. The incident has renewed concerns about the safety of water transportation, particularly in rural communities where boats remain the primary means of travel and livelihoods. This latest tragedy adds to a growing number of fatal boat mishaps recorded across the country, raising questions about safety regulations, the use of life jackets, vessel maintenance, and enforcement by relevant authorities. Our correspondent Stephen Enoch has been following the story and now brings us this report.
The residents of Malamawa and Duse are in mourning at the moment. Their only hope is to get better days ahead.
For many families here, the boat mishap did not just claim lives. It took away children, siblings, and family members, leaving behind empty spaces that may never be filled. Parents fought back tears as they remembered the children they had hoped to see return safely, only to receive news that shattered their families forever.
Kullum za ta makaranta ta dawo, aike bata iya shekara tara, yara komai yi mana take, aike ban ma wahala. Allah kuma ya karbi kayansa, mun wa Allah godiya, Allah ya gafarta musu, Allah sa san je a sa'a.
Abin da bata yi min, komai tana yi min. Na tana ta salati nake yi, ko da yau a raina.
A survivor shares her story.
Mun sha wahala muna cikin tafiya gaba ɗaya komai ya faɗa. Mun shiga ciki muna ta fama da ranmu, wuya ta yi wahala. Da kyar aka ciro mu, muna da yawa waɗanda aka tsamo, waɗansu rayukansu duk babu. Taya aka ciro mu, ga samari sun ciro mu sosai da yawa. Da kyar suka tsamo mu daga ciki, muna cikin ruwa muna fama.
As neighbors continue to comfort one another, the grief is shared by an entire community, still trying to come to terms with the scale of the tragedy.
Yau ma aka same su, kaga dai yau kwana biyu da mutuwa, yau kuma aka same su. Ko gari ba kawo su ba. Can a jeji ma aka yi, ɗaya an kawo ta makabarta. Ɗaya kuwa kana jin daura lafiya, to a can aka yi mata sutura, tunda a can aka kama ta a ruwa. Ai abun babin kici.
Beyond the tears, many are now calling for stronger safety measures on the waterways.
A taimaka mana mahaurin nan da yake ba mu wahala, a taimaka a dan mana gada a taimakon Allah da taimakon ƙasar nan. Shine abin da muke bukatu, Allah ya bada iko.
For the people of Malamawar Yandutse, healing will take time, but the memories of those lost will remain with them for years to come. In Jigawa, for News Central, Stephen Enoch.
A very sad report there from Jigawa State by our correspondent Stephen Enoch. Stephen Enoch actually joins us now. He's been covering the story. Stephen, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us on a Sunday morning. Stephen, I spoke to you during the week, if I'm not mistaken, about the same instance, and I'm wondering if you could bring us up to speed now on a Sunday. What's happened since then? What do you know so far about the Jigawa boat tragedy?
All right, so some people might think that the journey those people took was a very long journey, maybe like 1 kilometer, but the distance from one end to another, you can see from the visuals, it's just the people trying to cross from one end to another end. So the river separates two communities. So they came to the edge of the river, that's the water side, and then they're trying to board a boat to the other side, which is around, let's say, 100 meters, or let's say 150 or 200 meters to the other side. And while they were coming at the middle of the river, that was when the boat capsized. Now, these people, most of them are women. So from my discussion with the parents, the first man I spoke with, he lost 3 of his children, right? And they're all girls. They came back from school and they went to the farm to on chaff rice. So after working from the farm that day, they came back and were among the passengers. And the people who boarded the boats were 23. That's according to the residents. They told me 23 people boarded the boats with the driver. So the number is actually so much because it was supposed to be, let's say, 12, 15, but they were so much. And when they were at the middle of the river, it's capsized. So the man who lost 3 of his children, they're all girls. And then he said when he heard the story that his children and his girls had died, he was almost running crazy because he had trained them from while they were little. And then he even told them that, okay, when you're back from the farm, you prepare for school the next day. And the next thing was, they had died. And at the time when it happened, the water level was very high because there was a storm. So that was how they died. Another man lost 2 of his children. They found one of his girls, and they're girls actually. They found one of the girls in another community almost 10 kilometers away from that community, and she was buried there. He didn't even see her. She was buried there. His other daughter, they spent 2 days before they could get her body, recover her body, and she was buried. And then there was a woman who I spoke to. She lost her only child. She couldn't even talk. She's the second person who spoke after the first, respondent. It was so emotional, so touching, and it's more like they have given up hope, because when I asked them, okay, what the government came and promised them to, promise to build a bridge, construct a bridge there. So I asked them, okay, what more do you want from the government? They're like, they don't want anything from the government. They just want the souls of the deceased to rest in peace. It was quite a very, very sad story. And the fact is that the government said they're going to, give them speedboats. I saw some of the speedboats, but at the scene, I didn't see the speedboat because, according to the government, they're still trying to, prepare the boats. And when I got there, I saw that the government had given the boat operators life jackets. And I'm wondering, okay, the boat operators have life jackets. How about the passengers? And according to the government, they're making preparation for other people to have, life jackets when they're going to cross this particular river. So it was a quite sad story there, and they were in mourning actually. Women were crying. At some point, some men almost shed tears. They just tried so hard to hold themselves back because they're in front of the camera. So it was quite a sad story, if you ask me.
Well, Stephen, thank you for that report. It's really sad. Mazino is about to give him tissue, but you mentioned something. You said the boat that these children or the victims boarded was supposed to carry 12 to 15, but they were 23. Yeah. So that's already an issue. In as much as, the stream or the water is not so long, did you notice if they had any lifeguard in the area? While the government is talking about speedboats, did they talk about having lifeguards present in, in an area where they constantly cross that river?
At least a monitoring facility, any agency that monitors.
Thank you.
There is no agency that monitors them there. From what I saw, there is no lifeguard there at the moment where at the time where I said no lifeguard. The only lifeguard they have are the youths in the community. There was a man who I spoke to that said when he heard the news that the boat had capsized, he came to the community shouting, calling on people to come and rescue them because he was old. There's no way he could jump into the river and help them because he was helpless. There's no way he could jump into the river and help them or serve as a lifeguard. It's only the youth. So he came to the town, to the community, calling everybody, shouting. It took a while before he could understand what he was trying to, say, or the message he was trying to pass across. So after a while, people came, the youths, dived into the river and tried to start to commence rescue operations. So there is no lifeguard.
Enoch,
yeah.
My next line of questioning might make us zoom out of this story just a bit here. And I wanted to first of all find out exactly why do these people commute in these boats? Are they going to schools or are they going to farms? I want to know how necessary these boat travels are.
Okay, it is very necessary because for them to get to the farm and to other communities, they have to cross the river. The river is what, I would like to separate the community from other communities, mostly the farming communities or their farms. So before they get to the farm, they would have to cross that particular river. So there's no other. The other access point is maybe over 5, 6, 7 kilometers. So this one is just an easy route to just cross over and go to the community. So they have no other option than to just use the boats to cross over to either go to school or go to the farm or for other activities.
Enoch, thank you for establishing that. Enoch, let's go on a very short break. We're going to come back and I'm going to show you where this line of questioning is going. But stay with us, we'll be back. Welcome back. It's Breakfast Extra, and we're still discussing the Jigawa boat mishap with our correspondent Stephen Enoch, who has been following the story and also joins us here to give us some straight out the horse's mouth information about what he's discovered regarding the mishap. Now, Enoch, before we went, I was asking you how necessary these travels were on these waterways. But what you've established here is that this is absolutely necessary. This is their means of life. They go to farms, they go to schools. It is like, well, being in Lagos and using the roads. So I'm wondering from the government, or from the governance standpoint, how much effort is actually being put in efforts to monitor and manage the waterways. You already highlighted from before that there is no agency that seems to be monitoring these waterways. And then there is the issue regarding the governor's visits to the State House, where offices that should have been buzzing at such a point where you have all of these mishaps happening. There's the rainstorm from before, and these offices are closed. And there are no people who are attending. So I'm wondering what daily life absolutely is like for these people who actually are trying to etch simple livings, and how come these problems persist? What happens to their votes? And that's where I'm going at the end of the day.
All right. So I went to Secretariat, the houses all the MDAs. That was my first my arrival there. So after doing the report on the storm, I went there to speak with officials and all, and I was surprised. I went to the Ministry of Environment, and because before going there, I got his number from the CPS. So I called more than 10 times, no response. I sent the text message, no response. So later, I assumed that probably maybe he went to maybe site of the boat crash, because it happened while I was out on the storm, and I went to the street. I discovered that he wasn't around, and I asked, okay, why is he not around? He said, okay, he traveled abroad for something. I don't know, to travel abroad. And later on, I asked, okay, let me speak with the permanent secretary. He was also not on seat. And I'm wondering, okay, if the commissioner is not around for environment, the permanent secretary is not around, okay, who can speak on their behalf? He said, no one can speak, and I was quite perplexed. I went around, I saw most of the offices were closed. They were closed. That was before government came. All the offices were closed. I went to SEMA as well, that is the State Emergency Management Agency. I went to SEMA, and instead of he was not around, they had gone to bring him. I said, that's fine. Can I speak with anyone? There's no one who can speak with me. I went around, it was just empty, and I was wondering, okay, why are all these offices closed? I never knew the governor would come here. So after we left, and I was following up on the report on the boat mishap, trying to get into more details, that I discovered that after we left, governor, an hour after we left, the governor was at the ministry, at the secretariat, and discovered that most of offices, that's very correct, most of offices were closed. And one funny thing I saw there was, in some of these ministries, you see people selling granots, selling things like street food, just in front of the ministry. I'm like, why are these people not street things in order? You enter, you see some ministries, some places, there's no lights, it's just there. And I believe the government have to do more. And even before I spoke to SEMA, that was on Wednesday, it took a lot, because even calls, messages, they were not responding to me until at the tail end when yes, intervened, and there's also someone SA on, I think, climate change, something like that. They also intervened. I was with SEMA and SEMA. So it's so more. And going back to the community, so it shows that these stakeholders have to do a lot when it comes to catering for the people, because you are working for these people. You don't have to be just MIA or nowhere when they need you or when they need to do something. So it's something that they really need to put their eye and, focus on, if you ask me, Mazino.
Well, Enoch, we've run out of time, but in 30 seconds, can you tell me, this situation that happened, is it something that reoccurs in this community or is just one-off?
I believe it's one-off, but something that I know happens a lot of times is flooding, which we have not really experienced much flooding. And also the government have, taken some steps to curb flooding this year in Jigawa. So I hope that we do not experience flooding in Jigawa, because when it happens in Jigawa, it, takes over farmlands, houses. But there are some measures that I saw, while I was going to ring him, to curtail the efforts of, to curtail the effects of flooding. So I just hope that this year will be a good one, and we don't pray that we experience a boat mishap like this, or, things that will just cause so much attention and will cost lives.
Well, Enoch, thank you, and please follow up on the speedboat. So let's see how soon it gets.
Let's see how real they
and
actually
how
are.
real it is. Thank you so much for the report, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, Enoch.
Good to be here.
Now, for many communities that depend on water transportation, safe waterways are not a luxury. They're not a necessity. They are a necessity, I beg your pardon. Preventing future tragedies will require stronger regulation, better enforcement, and greater public awareness of safety practices. Now, let's go on a short break. When we return, we continue. Stay with us.
Welcome, it's time for the strips again. It's Celestine's best part of the show. We always have the highlights. And of course, she'll be joining me for some analysis here. Celestine, thank you very much. There she is. Grand. Now, let's start with today's days for the strips, the cartoons that we gathered all through the week last week that we want to talk about. Some of them, well, most of them, in fact, all of them actually depicting what our actual lives are like, our lived realities. And we've got quite a few from The Guardian, Business Day, and of course, I think Daily Trust. But let's start from The Guardian. And this is what? Cash for debt, or crude for debt, rather. First cartoon here shows federal government, of course, dropping small bundles of cash inside of a huge drum they built debt service. And even though it's carrying a much larger bag there, or sack there, that's tagged cash, of course, you can see another man by the side saying, really, is that all? And the rest, what happens to the rest? Under the cartoon, you find this where it says, the boys are waiting. Very interesting thing here that the cartoon is saying, Queen, it's suggesting that Nigeria's oil earnings are being swallowed by debt repayments. We have to pay that first before we think about development. And although the country earns billions from crude oil, a large share of that money, well, like I said, goes towards paying it back. All the loans that we seem to keep getting or taking. And there's another strip here today that actually highlights that. I'm going to tell you about that. We don't repair hospitals, we don't repair schools, no roads, no public service generally. So here, the cartoonist, whom I think is Asukwa, if I'm not mistaken. No, this is The Guardian, not Asukwa. The cartoonist here is actually saying that Nigerians are truly benefiting, or asking whether Nigerians are truly benefiting from the country's oil wealth, or whether most of it is actually being, well, spent somewhere else for political reasons. And here's the thing, Queen. Because we see this oil fluctuation happening here and there, especially with the Strait of Hormuz being closed and all. It affects our oil profits, whether you like it or not. Sometimes it grows, sometimes it shrinks, but we're still rather balanced. And you'd expect to see all of these monies that we're getting go to development, but we don't see it. Where is it going? The argument, debt servicing. We're still talking about debt servicing in the next cartoon, but what do you think about this one?
Well, real quick, why he was throwing the particular bundle into that drum, you could see that the bag is holding and his tummy are at the same side. He was also throwing some through his mouth while the boys are waiting. Well, we hope that very soon those monies will come out and we can fix our roads and help, our education and health system.
You're a spotter. You know how to spot these men with big bellies, because they always have big cash bags behind them.
It's quite obvious.
Where do you learn the skill from, Queen?
That's why it's my favorite section.
Let's do Business Day now. Business Day has a very similar one. This time is the president standing next to the finance minister digging a hole. The president is continuously digging this hole that's labeled debt. And then, of course, the finance minister says to him, oh, God, the people want to know how deep we've gone. No? And the president says, just tell them that we're just getting started. Now, here's what the cartoon is saying. This, again, is like a joke about Nigeria's rising debt. The government says borrowing is needed. Of course, we think so. Of course, you needed to build infrastructure, support the economy. But Nigerians worry that the country is actually borrowing too much. We're borrowing more than we can service back. And the cartoon is asking a simple question. How much debt is too much? And how or who will eventually pay for it? Is it you and I or our children? When will we stop borrowing, Queen, is the big question.
Good question. It's just like the cartoon is saying, you have a title, but you're not holding the shovel. So you're not doing the work. You're just standing there and telling us what to do. When will this debt finish? We
the finance minister is trying. He is trying. I'll tell you something. He's trying a lot. Stats will show that the reforms that he's suggesting are actually working for Nigeria on a macro scale. The
not disputing the facts, but the stats and what's happening in Nigeria is not.
Yeah, so that's the translation I was about to talk about.
Tell me.
It's a simple fact of trickling down. And mostly for the Nigerian instance, the macro instance is that when we make these gains, we find out that there are other plugs that we need to plug it into. And some of these plugs, well, are not really accounted for. And that's where the big question is. Where exactly is
which are all the gaps
going? Exactly. So, well, it's a very interesting. If I have to go into that, we'll have to start talking about FPIs.
This is my news stance for the week.
Okay. I get you now. Let's move on to something similar, batonomics. Now, this is from, if I'm not mistaken, what paper is this again? This is also still from the Business Day, and it's by Asuko. And one thing about the Business Day cartoons this week is that they were very verbose. They had so many text in them, but this one, very critical, very interesting. All subsidy, energy security expenses circled on the board. At the top, batonomics. Lecturer asks John, tell the class to what extent these two concepts diverge in their underlying principles and practical implications. And John says, excuse me, sir, the two of them are the same. The difference is the same. What this cartoon is making clear and making fun of is the debate over fuel subsidy. And government officials, well, they're saying that subsidy has been removed. Subsidy is gone, said the president a couple of years ago. But the truth is right now what we have is called the Energy Securities Fund. Is it called a fund? Energy security expenses. And the argument from authorities is that they're using these expenses to make sure that Nigeria continues to have energies, have fuel, have oil, and we don't have a time where we have lack of it. Yes, thank you very much. We agree. But then again, doesn't that sound familiar like, say, fuel subsidy? It's the question. So if you want to remove fuel subsidy, where exactly are all those monies going if you still need these funds that we're making to shore up our energy security? That's a big question. Is it really gone at this point? What's your take, Queen?
Well, you said it all. The truth of the matter is you can't change a name and still do the same thing. Is how we have, duplicate committees doing the same thing.
Or fake ones.
Yes, we need to stop making it look like the citizens don't know what they're seeing or what you're translating. They're communicating bit by bit, but people are not putting the pieces together. It's not translating. They're not transparent with the people they are leading. And it's really, really confusing when you start making your citizens feel stupid, like they don't know what they're doing.
I see you there. I get what you're saying. Very true. Thank you very much, Asuko, for that one. Business Day. Let's move on to the next one. They're all kind of like related. Our very next paper. Let's see now. Father-daughter, Daily Trust, Bulama, one of my best cartoonists. Father-daughter is always this conversation between a father and his daughter. I imagine somewhere that might be the kitchen table. And one of them is always reading a paper. This time, daughter says to father, Dad, the U.S. has imposed 12.5% tariff on Nigerian imports, which they have. I'll come back to explain. And father says to daughter, well, this is all while China is about to mark 100 days of zero tariff on imports from African countries. Check his newspaper. Who are Nigeria's friends? Who are we in bed with at this point? Mostly, it's with the United States. But then again, who really is Nigeria's friend? Let's zoom out. Africa's friend. It would be China, because for a long time running now, almost 100 days, China has opened its trade to African countries. So you don't have to pay anything when you're trading. But in the case of America, what you must do is pay tax before your imports can come in. That's another competition on its own, because you're not the only one importing these goods inside of America. But since you have this tax to pay, there's less money in your pocket than, say, from somebody who's importing from maybe, another country, not in Africa. And that's the problem. So Bulama is simply saying here, maybe we should start taking our advantages from people who are really our friends. Maybe we should strengthen those relationships instead of continuing to be in bed with people who really don't want us inside of their economy, aka US, perhaps? Your take, Celestine?
As you know, this just took me back to the monologue, neighbors.
Neighbors.
As much as we're trying to have relationships away from you, look around you. Your neighbor, your friend is the first person that will smell your trash. That's
I know trash wasn't the first word on your
I think we don't look at just the big picture, that's small. Your environment. It's like if I live in a nasty environment, but when I come out, I look so clean, and then you're far from me and everything, like, oh, Celeste, you look so good. One day you will visit me and then you see my neighborhood. How is our neighborhood before we start, diverting?
I hear what you're saying. I think you're trying to say that we should consolidate on our African relationships.
Yes.
First of all, yeah? Yeah, that's what we're perhaps missing. But then again, you can still trade with China, who have their doors open. The problem
that's a good thing.
Do they need what you're importing or rather exporting? That's the thing.
There's always a clause, and we never know. A few
China
years
is self-sufficient. China has its own. We already have. Thank you.
We never know.
But you never know. You never know. What could you trade with? Let's do the last one, which funnily enough is quite related. The Vanguard has this very interesting strip here from this morning. From the past 1 week. No easy escape. Let me describe this. Of course, you can see a figure here chasing a Nigerian out of Nigeria. He has to jackpot. Where's he going? South Africa. Because one of the easiest places, well, at least until recently, where you could go to change your lives. However, you know what's happening in South Africa with the xenophobic attacks and, of course, the violence and killings that we have been experiencing lately. So what do? Let's repatriate them, bring them back to Nigeria. You're welcome back to Banana Republic, which is depicted very aptly here with the gorilla. I'm always very, very careful with gorillas in cartoons, with the gorilla and the bananas. And look behind there, Queen Celestine.
I can see.
Can you see the bandits?
I can see.
Of course, you're coming back to a place where we have abductions, violence, insurgents, and all of that.
I can see. This picture just have different. Again, you tell me I can spot things. You see that the gorilla that was chasing the citizen says hardship.
Yeah.
Back then, hardship was like, why are we paying?
Like one slice.
Why are we paying 90 naira per liter? You ran, and then you came back with not so much.
300 naira.
Exactly.
1,300 naira.
You can see the small box is coming back with, meaning you had to rush out. You were also chased out. And then you come, the hardship.
With an even smaller box, by the way.
Yes, with a smaller box. And then you come back and the hardship that chased you is balling. That means the hardship is harder than how you left.
Oh, I didn't see that.
The hardship is eating bananas.
It's even bigger. It's fatter.
It's fresh.
Rounder.
You're coming back
comfortable.
to a collaboration of hardships.
You're coming back to a jungle. Oh,
yes.
You do spot things.
I'm being partnered with bandits and guns.
That's interesting.
Under the plantation.
This was the explanation I was going to give. That the message is it's saying that leaving Nigeria does not always solve, life's problems. You might think that it might be better elsewhere, but then it reminds you.
The grass is greener where you
the grass
water.
It's not always greener on the other side. Many Nigerians travel abroad because they are hoping for better opportunities, but they also, are going to face dangers when they get there. There's crime, there's xenophobia in South Africa, there's insecurity. So the cartoon is reminding us that every country has its own challenge. Maybe you should stay here, according to the president.
And fix it.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think that should be our mantra. Maybe we should.
That they stop insulting us and chasing us and giving us visa issues and dragging us here and there. Let's fix our home, can we,
yes,
please?
Indeed. Yes, indeed. So I don't know, out of everything from today, which one was your best one?
All of it.
All of them, of course. Thank you for the contributions. Can't do this without you.
As always.
I'll come back and we'll have another conversation. We've got more, so do stay with us. This is Breakfast Extra. Second hour here for Breakfast Extra, but first let's do the headlines. My name is Mazino Appeal. Now, the United Action for Democracy has called on the federal government to facilitate the release of former Kaduna State Governor and former Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nasir El-Rufai, who has spent 150 days in detention over allegations of abuse of office, money laundering, and wiretapping. Addressing a press conference in Lagos, the group expressed concerns over what it described as the stringent conditions attached to his bail, arguing that they have prevented him from regaining his freedom. The organization also urged the authorities to ensure El-Rufai has unhindered access to adequate medical care and called for the release of his personal physician, Dr. Bello Abubakar.
Surrounding the condition of Malam Nasir El-Rufai in detention and the allegations that he may not be receiving adequate and timely medical attention, we are equally concerned by reports regarding the alleged arrest and detention of his personal physician, Professor Bello Abubakar, by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, that the fight against corruption and the prosecution of alleged offences must be conducted strictly within the framework of the Constitution and the rule of law. These rights must be respected, even when a person is under investigation or facing criminal charges.
The debate over the proposed creation of state police continues to generate strong reactions days after the House of Representatives passed the constitutional amendment bill amid a walkout by opposition lawmakers. Now, the bill, which seeks to establish state police service across Nigeria, secured the required two-thirds majority in the House. However, its passage has sparked controversy, with the minority caucus alleging that constitutional procedures and the House standing orders were not fully observed during consideration of the legislation. While supporters describe the proposal as a major step towards strengthening grassroots security, critics argue that concerns over due process and broad political consensus must be addressed before such a far-reaching constitution amendment moves forward. And the chairman of the Bungudu local government area in Zamfara State, Nuru Abdullahi, has been abducted by armed bandits following an attack on his residence. The gunmen reportedly stormed the residence in the early hours of Saturday, overpowering security personnel before taking the council chairman away. The attack claimed the lives of 4 members of his security team during a gun battle with the assailants. Troops of Operation Fasanayama later responded and engaged the fleeing attackers, rescuing 5 members of the chairman's family, including his wife, mother, 2 children, and other relatives. Security forces say operations are ongoing to rescue the abducted council chairman and track down those responsible for the attack. And a woman has been killed and several others injured after suspected armed men attacked Se Gbemshin Ununu joint along the Kiado Abako Road in Yukum local government area of Benue State. Now, the injured victims are receiving treatment at St. Anthony Catholic Hospital in Zeki Biam, while security agencies continue efforts to restore calm in the area. Community leaders condemned the attack, saying residents have endured repeated assaults over the past month and described the latest killings as unacceptable. They called on the Benue State government, security agencies, traditional rulers, and local authorities to work together to end the violence, to restore peace, and protect lives and property in the affected communities. Now, also, troops of Operation Hadin Kai have recorded another breakthrough after a senior ISWAP finance operative surrendered in Nigeria's northeast. The suspect turned himself in along Gamburu-Wolgul supply route in Borno State, arriving with 2 children and handing over an AK-47 rifle, ammunition, a motorcycle, and cash. The military authorities identified him as the chief finance operative of ISWAP enclave at Jubiliram. He is undergoing interrogation to provide intelligence that could help dismantle remaining terrorist networks. The surrender follows recent military offensives, with about 46 terrorists and their family members voluntarily surrendering in recent days. And that's all the news we have this hour. Do stay with us because we have more conversation coming your way inside of Breakfast Extra. We'll be back.
Now, online gambling continues to grow rapidly in Nigeria, driven by increased internet access, mobile technology, and the popularity of sports betting. Industry reports now estimate that Nigeria's illegal online gambling market is worth billions of dollars, prompting renewed calls for stronger regulation and enforcement.
While regulators have introduced measures to improve oversight of the industry, questions remain about how effective these efforts have been in tackling illegal operators and protecting Nigerians, especially young people who are increasingly exposed to online betting platforms. This morning, we will examine the scale of the challenge and what more can be done to curb illegal gambling in Nigeria. So, joining us virtually are, well, at least one person joining us virtually, Fisayo Oke. He's the founder of Gamble Alert, and of course, our in-house Udoka Njoku, sports correspondent and in-house class act. You're welcome, Udoka. It's very hard to get him to sit still.
Yes.
He's very uncomfortable right now.
He's an actor amongst other things.
And an actor amongst other things. Fisayo, you're welcome. Thank you very much, Fisayo, for joining us to give us the details.
Do you want to start the first question?
Do you want me to? All right, I will. Fisayo, first of all, let's know how bad this menace of illegal betting is in Nigeria before we come to the sports angle here with Udoka.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think that that's a very important question to ask about an industry that is booming and it looks like it's less regulated than it should. About 2-3 years ago, we were looking at 67-70% of the market share belonging to the illegal operators. Today, we probably are seeing around 56% of it. So, I mean, if you look at it by estimate, you will still be able to say that more than half of the market actually belongs to the illegal operators. That's how bad it has been.
Now, when we say illegal operators, I'm wondering exactly how these illegal operators operate. Because basically, I'm on my phone minding my business, and I keep getting these alerts. I keep getting these adverts, and they're mostly all betting companies. And I'm wondering, these aren't the regular ones that I see tangibly on signages when I'm walking the streets. Are these the illegal operators we're talking about, especially since we're focusing on online betting?
Right. So I mean, you can look at it from that perspective. But then when we talk about illegal operators, we're talking about operations of gaming companies that don't have licenses. So even if they were the regular ones that you would see ordinarily on the street, as long as they don't have a license, they are illegal operators. And then there are those who are syndicates. For instance, not too long ago, we found out that there were gaming operators who were operating from Indonesia, and then they hacked into a government website and then listed themselves as gaming operators. And then, of course, they were taking bets from Nigeria and about 15 other African countries. Those also are illegal operators. So it's a very serious issue with them. They are sophisticated gaming operators who have ways around. And of course, because of the borderless nature of the internet, they are also able to penetrate. The Supreme Court judgment also that takes away the power from the federal government leaves a fragmentation. So if, for instance, Lagos State has the power and the amenities to, monitor the online platform, what about states that don't have it? So they are still able to go into those states and still, do their operations.
Well, Fisayo, you said something very interesting, but I'll come back to you. Udo, that's what I call him. Now, my first experience with World Cup was this last one. And I could see the anger, the excitement, the jumping. My sofa almost broke because they decided to watch World Cup at mine. So looking at all that momentum, no, I want Argentina, I want Spain, these people. Why? Why is football so intense that, it has led us to the point where people are betting their life?
Well, to be very honest with you, football used to be very, very interesting back in the day before all of this betting thing came about. And because of online betting, a lot of love has left football. The love has now gone into your tickets because you are wanting the team. Even if you are an Argentina fan and you pick France to win, you will support France because of your ticket. Because
blur the lines on,
that's why you're putting
loyalty.
Your money. Exactly. That's where you want to make money from. So the love has switched from love for football to the passion for the game, to the passion for making money from online. That's why I see the craze all over social media, why people want to make money from football. And it's just crazy at the moment. Even the under 18s are betting on these things as well.
Because they have access to phones. Now, would you say, to an extent, gambling is not, would you say it's not bad? It's just that, don't be unhealthy about it.
It is bad if you become addicted to it.
Well, good. I was going to say, it depends who you're asking.
Exactly. It's bad if you become addicted to it.
Sport.
Because I've met a couple of people there was a documentary I did one time on the dark side of betting. I talked to an addict, and as at the moment, he's owing over 2 million naira to all of these loan sharks because it takes money from them just
bets
place
with it.
bets. And does he make his money back? No.
Because he's not betting well.
Even if he bets well, he doesn't own the game. He doesn't play the game. He's not a football player who plays the game. You understand? So it is bad if you become addicted to all of these things. But it is okay for us to say, yes, put your money where your mouth is. And you've been advised on all of the websites, don't spend what you cannot afford to lose. If you are not 18 years old, don't bet. But all over social media, we see even the under 18s betting just because of, in quotes, greener pastures. It never comes.
Right, but this thing keeps opening.
Potholes.
Yes. So in terms of betting, we see how they have brand ambassadors. So if you're looking up to like a techno and the rest, you're like, oh, I need to make this money. And how do you think we can regulate it? So because if it becomes a problem, if I start betting at 18. And I've been winning, I lose some to win some. 50-something, I'll still be betting, because if I'm really interested in watching football, then
that's the addiction.
Yeah,
That's
so how do we curb that? Should we just stop watching football?
It's tough. Even if you ask Fishayo, it is quite tough because the bodies have come out with enforcement to ensure that we don't go beyond what we're supposed to do when it comes to betting. But then there's a law that says under 18s should not bet. There's a Lagos State regulatory body that will clamp down on illegal gambling. When you go to all of these shops, betting doesn't just fall on online gambling, on sports alone. There are the local ones. There are pool houses where you see elderly men who play pool. They are the ones that will tell you this thing happened in 1996, it will happen in 2026, it will happen in 2027. These are gambling addicts. So it is difficult for us to actually curb this menace in the society at the moment. But from the parents' angle, there are things we can do on our children's phones to, I don't have a child yet, though, but then there are things we can do on our children's phones to ensure that these things don't pop up.
Okay.
You can create the pop-up blockers and all of that for them not to even see these websites.
So that's a familial responsibility, familial responsibility, or social responsibility.
Fisayo.
May I wanted to ask Fisayo a very interesting question that piggybacks off of what we're talking about here.
You go first.
So Fisayo, here's the thing. 2024, a court ruling shifted the responsibility for regulation from a federal point of view to a state point of view. And so you have different regulations in different states. For instance, in the north, it's totally haram. You can't do that because of Sharia law. Here in Lagos, the states, here in the south, different states have their own regulations. However, there's one demarcation that's very hard to regulate, and that's the online space. So I'm wondering what challenges regulators are going to face when they try to curb or end illegal online betting.
Thank you very much. It's chasing shadows to think that you would end illegal online gambling. It's virtually impossible. And that's because if you end the one for today, another one springs up tomorrow. What we've always advocated for is making compliance seamless, and then you realize that you would have reduced the amount of illegal gambling. And that's not to say that there won't be unscrupulous gambling operators who still want to come into the continent or into Nigeria to do their business without getting licenses. But at the same time, if you incentivize non-compliance, as we currently see it, you will find that a lot of operators who ordinarily would even want to come into the market under the regulation, they would easily veer off towards the illegal space, because at the end of the day, it's still a business for them, right? What we've seen with gaming regulators today is that not very many of them are thinking about the channelization rates in the country. And I mention again that Lagos State may be doing a whole lot. We've seen them sign MOUs with the UK Gambling Commission, which is the most solid and most comprehensive regulator in the world. We've seen them sign MOUs to combat it. We've seen them work with the African iGaming Alliance to, have automatic exchange of information and what have you. Those are very important steps to take. However, that's just Lagos State. Under the Federation of State Gaming Regulators, there are about 22 to 24 states who are, members. But then at the end of the day, it's only Lagos State that we see doing so much in that regard. So if you curb illegal gambling, and you know that because Lagos State does not have the power to control what happens in every other state, especially online. And the fact that it's not necessarily the federal government that is regulating anymore, it now has to be that there's an MOU between the federal government agencies who are able to control the online space and then every other regulator as well. So if we find only one state doing this, it means that at the end of the day, you are making illegal operations very easy for these gaming companies. So for me, I would say that the challenges that we've seen is that not very many of these regulators have the capacity to actually look at this comprehensively, and some of them are not, in fact, doing enough to achieve it. But then to think that we can curb it entirely, I don't think that's a possibility. Even the most mature market are still grappling with this.
Well, Fisayo, I like to talk about money all the time. Now, we've talked about regulation. You've talked about how vulnerable our systems, the internet can be, since it doesn't really have borders. Now, can you paint a picture? Give us a story about, how you've copped an, illegal gambling agency, and how much was lost, how much was, regained. Just paint a picture so maybe people will understand the gravity at which we're losing monies.
Okay, thank you. So I think that because I am a player protection advocate, I'll come from that perspective and then link it back to money. Because when we talk about illegal operations, most people always think about how much revenue government is losing because of these illegal operators. We're also not thinking about how much harm, if they're not regulated, it means that all of the principles, all of the features that are expected on the platforms will not be present on illegal operators' platforms, right? So in our work, we've seen people who came about to complain that they became addicted on a platform, and then, of course, they need therapy support and what have you. And then when you begin to ask questions around it, you found out that they had lost so much money, zero control whatsoever. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Zero control whatsoever. They just continue to lose money, on this platform. These platforms don't have any exercise for self-exclusion, no provision for behavioral analytics. They just continue to take these people's money. And at the end of the day, you realize that a wife at home has lost all the husband's savings on this platform because nobody is actually tracing the fact that this person is chasing losses. In terms of government revenue as well, I mean, it goes without saying that if there are operators who are spending money on compliance, these guys are cheating them. They're making a whole lot of money from the industry. So we're talking about billions in terms of in naira terms now that has been lost, tens, hundreds of billions that's been lost, into the illegal market. But for me, that's how I would estimate it: harm, and then how much money the government is losing.
All right, thank you, Fisaya. I'm going to come back to Udoka. I almost said Udoka. Udoka means Sunday in my language, so permit me.
And it's Sunday.
And it is a
Having
Sunday.
Udoka.
Udoka. So
Udoka means peace.
Let's bridge sports betting and let's bridge betting and sports now.
Yeah.
Let's get sports betting. And there's one thing that actually bridges these two together, and that's advertising. And I'm wondering how regulators can use this to their advantage. Do you think that perhaps maybe stopping advertising when it comes to sports and sports material would help better than awareness, perhaps maybe going out to let people know about the ills of sports betting, what they could get themselves into if they're not careful, especially online? Which do you think would be a better resort for the regulators? Stop advertising or more social awareness?
Both ways. They've been doing more of social awareness. Even on the adverts, you see at the end of the adverts, do not bet if you are under 18.
Is that enough?
It is not enough, right? Because they also want to make their monies. In England, in the EPL, there was a time they had to ban football jerseys from wearing. If you have a betting company sponsoring your jerseys, you take it out. The likes of West Ham. There was also Nottingham Forest. They had to remove the betting companies on their jerseys because it was related to betting. It affected football in a lot of ways. So it is not enough for us to stop the adverts and social responsibility. But again, it still boils down to human capacity, human intelligence. Are you able to stay away? Even if there's no adverts, Mazino, for 25 years on betting, people will still discover new ways. There's social media, there's Twitter. People are dropping odds on social media just recently, somebody, I think it's somebody dropped a code on social media, and people use as little as 100, 200, 300 naira to win as much as 200 million naira.
What are these codes? What are these odds? What are these sure bets? I keep hearing these buzzwords when it comes to betting. What are they exactly? Since you because have experience.
Yeah, well, of course. So when you talk about sure bets, I get you. I get you because I do sports, so I have to know a lot of all of these things. Now you talk about sure bets. It is just to convince the layman out there that this thing I'm giving you is definitely going to come through.
Is that in itself legal?
It is not legal because
not legal.
It is not. But there's something I can tell you. I could tell you, for example, if Barcelona is playing Southampton, obviously Barcelona is going to beat Southampton. But sometimes they'll tell you Southampton, because Barcelona are the better side.
Yeah.
They're obviously the better side. They have better players, quality and all of that. But then someone can wake up and tell you, place money on this game, Southampton.
A dream telling me.
Do you understand? Southampton will score against, but those are difficult odds. And when you put big money on it, you win big cash. And if it comes through, obviously you become an automatic trusted agent to give us betting codes.
Well,
so it's crazy on social media.
Doka, there's a gray area because, you know, the way you've explained, if I go and bet, now I'm sure that I will win from what you're explaining.
You just might lose.
But I think, again, we're talking about when we say illegal, meaning they don't have the right documentation.
No licensing.
Doesn't mean that they're not doing the same thing as the people with license.
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah.
The point here is that you can't hold them accountable.
Yep.
There's certain responsibilities that these betting houses should have to their customers.
So I think for me, while we're finding or holding the people without the right license accountable, we have the ones with license sponsoring things, sponsoring our team to do. How do we curb and limit the madness that is the gamble itself while we're still talking about the illegal ones?
I think it still falls back. It still falls back on the human. He spoke about money. And to break it down, some of these betting companies, you think when a bettor walks into a betting shop or online to play a ticket of 100 naira, that person thinks he or she is losing 100 naira or he's making a lot of money from the tickets if it wins. But if you take a look at the number of people who place bets on that particular game, you have as much as 1 trillion naira.
More profit for the operator.
Do you understand? You have as much as 1 trillion naira going down the drain from people's pockets.
And that's the real cost.
If we're not taxing these betting organizations.
Oh, I'm sure that if you just mentioned tax, it might that document might come out in 2 hours.
Celestine, Fisayo had something to say just a moment ago. Fisayo, go ahead. You were egging to go there.
Thank you. I was wondering because when we were discussing online gambling, I see that we're making allusions to sports betting. Because when we talk about online gambling, we're also talking about the virtual.
Yes.
We're talking about online casinos and all that. In fact, research in experience continues to show to us that the most harmful part of gambling is actually these virtual games. You know, because of how fast they are, and then they're easily repeated. Simple game rules and every other thing. This are very easy.
Explain this virtual betting to us as laymen, please.
Okay, so a person walks into a shop and then there's a game called Aviator. So a person walks into a shop or just on his device, and then he places a bet that this plane will not go down at this time. So the plane continues to go up, and then it continues to wait, and the time is, of course, reading, and then it nosedives. And that's the end of the game. So in less than 2 minutes, you know your fate, and then your money is either gone or you have won. And because, you know, very easy to play, you think that it's just a game that you're playing. People continue to, you know, spend their money. Mind you, the markers of harm are not necessarily dependent on money alone. You know, the fact that people can continue to play gets them hooked to the game and they're unable to stop. And then once there's a loss of control, finance is just one of those things that is going to be a sign of trouble, you know, for them. And then now talking about advertisement that Doka raised, which is a very important point. But again, research shows to us that advertisement plays a very important role in making people gamble. We do a lot of research. We go to different communities and schools as well. And then we realize that advertisement is actually a major contributory factor to why people actually are gambling. And when we talk about advertisement, we're not necessarily talking about what's on DSTV alone. It's as little as reinforcement. So a gambling company says, oh, we had the biggest winner today, and then they are signposting the person, they're showing the person on social media. You're already advertising to the next person. What you're asking the person to go do is also to go to place their bet. Also, in Lagos State, Lagos, Oyo, Anambra, Cross River, and Imo State, they are very similar content of the law in terms of player protection and responsible gambling. For advertisement, they say that you can use celebrities and well-known personalities to advertise, as long as the well-known personality does not say or does not allude to the fact that gambling contributed to their success. Now, the question is, when a well-known personality appears on TV to advertise, maybe he doesn't say a word, I already know what he's talking about. So exactly how does the law expect that people don't receive it as though he's saying it contributed to his success? So, I mean, these are issues that we need to also begin to look at. And for us, we write to regulators a lot to say, look, we think that you need to begin. Still talking about advertisement, you know that the law also says that you should not advertise close to a cyber cafe, places of research, secondary or primary schools. But it doesn't say how many meters. So you don't know the distance. So when you look at all of these things, you're asking, are you leaving it to the judgment of the operator? Because far or near may be subjective. So if you think that 200 meters is too close, and I think that is far enough, how exactly do you prove that? Because there is no specific mention of that in the law. So for me, these are issues that need to, be addressed by the regulators.
I'm sorry to butt in.
Yes.
So talking about these virtual games, there are some of the ones you call, apart from Aviator, there's one you call Color, there's one you call Fast Football, there's a dog race, a lot of them.
One.
Yeah, you understand? So they are quick.
Check your temperature.
I mean, you have to do research on all of these things. So you walk into a betting company and you find people, because they lose money on a day. In a day, a betting shop can gain as much as 500,000 naira in profit in a day. While the customers who come in there to play, each of them lose 100 naira individually. But at the end of the day, they are all losing 500,000 naira in split seconds. In less than a minute, you're losing that much money because you're playing color, you're playing Aviator, you're playing Fast Football. These games are less than 2 minutes. And when you win, there's a temptation to want to play more. And when you lose, you'll be like, I won before, I can do it again. So they keep on going on and on and on. And so it's difficult for us to cover all of this, no matter how much we try to.
So seeing how difficult it is, I'm wondering if Fisayo has a very strong suggestion for the regulators. How do you think we can curb this in one final piece of advice there, Fisayo?
Thank you. I think that regulators need to decide what they want. If you're focused on taxation and revenue generation, then you actually are not looking at curbing illegal market or gambling harm. Because at the end of the day, you cannot beat the child and expect it not to cry. Right? If you are taking so much, they also want to make so much. They have to make back the money. Otherwise, you're sending them to the black market. So you want to ensure that those, even within channelization, are able to survive. And we're not. If you're saying don't advertise, then you also have to be saying reduce the amount that you're paying to me in terms of license fees and all, because the more you increase it, the more they also want to generate. And then when you talk to them about doing responsible gambling, they're wondering how exactly do we achieve both revenue and player protection. And then for illegal market, cooperation, that's the big word. You cannot, there's no country that can achieve curbing the illegal market without cooperation. So Nigeria has to work with Ghana, has to work with South Africa and a few other countries to ensure that there is the exchange of information. That way, you're able to share intelligence and then reduce the amount, the size of the illegal market.
Wow. Thank you so much, Fisayo K, for having this conversation with us. I believe that something that was created would always somehow have a solution. And I think the earlier we put our heads together and figure it out, the better. And Udoka Joku, thank you so much for joining, gentlemen. Let's go on a short break. while I bet on Mazino when we come back.
Welcome again. Time for another conversation. Now, let's talk about the proposed 2026 budget. As drawing intense public scrutiny following reports of controversial allocations to palaces and religious institutions, as well as concerns over delays in the budget process itself. Now, while some argue that such allocations recognize the role of traditional and faith-based institutions in national development and social cohesion, others question whether they reflect the country's most pressing needs at a time of economic hardship, rising debt, inflation, and growing demands for improved public service.
And this has once again raised important questions about transparency, accountability, and the priorities that shape public spending. Are these allocations justified within the broader national development agenda, or do they signal that political interests are taking precedence over critical sectors such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and security? Joining us to unpack these issues is Mohammed Akanji, an economic research and data analyst. Mohammed, thank you so much for joining us.
Tina, good morning, Mazino. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Mohammed.
Now,
Mohammed, go ahead. Queen is eager to ask a question.
Yes. From an economic perspective, what do these developments reveal about, Nigeria's budgeting process and spending priorities? We're seeing, alleged fake agencies. We're seeing monies for church and palaces. What do you think?
Oh, thank you again for having me, and it's really my pleasure for being here. A very important contentious issue that we often be able to masticate about in the nation has to do with budget, especially in the last couple of weeks when the National Assembly raised an important alarm about the non-implementation of, we have the component of 2025. At least at the moment, we have 3 budgets that is actually running simultaneously. The 2025 Appropriation Act, the Supplementary Act of 2025, and the 2026 budget that took effect from the 1st of July of this year as well. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriation, in fact, raised a particular eyebrow. That at March this year, just about 30% of the capital component of the 2025 budget have been implemented. And that created a whole lot of problems and a whole lot of challenges for us. So that created a whole lot of problems and a whole lot of challenges for many of us in the nation, unfortunately. So it is very important for us to be able to raise this particular point at this point in time. And what is that particular point is the fact that there are several factors, myriad of factors that are actually responsible for these. Most importantly, it's as a result of the revenue shortfall. Even though the government, raised the concern that the non-oil revenue have actually been met, that target have been met for the non-oil revenue, but 80% of our revenue will also come from the oil sources, and about 70% of that have actually not been met. So I think this creates that web of confusion and challenge as to what actually happened to the capital component, which is the major driver, the critical segment of the budget that is yet to be implemented. And so we have that concern. We have those eyebrows that are actually being raised about what is this government really doing? Having 3 budgets running simultaneously at the same time, that will definitely be able to create a lot of mistrust, a lot of lost investors' confidence and things like that. But as I said, I think I can able to make 3 factors that are actually responsible. As I said, revenue shortfall. Yes, as much as possible, August last year, we were able to meet our 2025 budget, luckily. But for the non-oil revenue segment anyway, for the non-oil revenue, the revenue part of it have actually not been fully met, unfortunately. And I think the other part there is as a result of procurement delays, lack of transparency and accountability when it comes to when it actually comes to what those particular components of one of these budgets actually needed to be implemented. So I think these are actually some of those particular factors that have actually been responsible for the knotty areas or some of the salient part or the contentious issues that I actually have around the 2026 budget. Yeah, we had the Minister of Finance as well, coming out to actually be able to express that efforts are being made to ensure that this is actually stopped. During the Boyer administration, maybe just a little bit of a memory lane, is the fact that we have zero-based budgeting, a January to December budget cycle that we maintain in this nation. But it seems like there's been a departure from that since, this administration came in 2023. But as I said, and it's also very, very important that if the recurrent expenditure, which is as much as possible, have been implemented to the maximum of 100%, the capital component that will be able to touch the lives of every Nigerian, and that is more inclusive than the recurrent expenditure are just salaries, here and there, interest and the things that will only be able to favor how many people are employed by the government, maybe less than 4 to 5% of the Nigerian labor force. But the capital component that will be able to impact and touch the lives of the remaining 90-something% needed to actually be able to gain attention as well.
So, Mohammed, in a nutshell, would you say that this is a misplaced priority for the government?
I would say the misplaced priority. I would say that in its entirety, because we've seen that the government, the house screening that happened on Tuesday, where the Minister of Finance, Taiwo Oyedele, was there, and he was trying to be able to provide. I mean, we cut him some slacks. He's trying to be able to provide rationale, to provide reasons why, especially talking about debt, talking about our budget, and in fact that if you look at the budget itself, there were 58 trillion naira budget. Don't forget the 58 before the supplementary budget that was eventually passed. And we have a revenue shortfall of about 13 trillion. And that is what brought about the issue of borrowing, the issue of taxes. So we had Minister of Health, for example, saying that they've only received 13% of the capital component. But I felt like I said, project delays, in terms of procurement delays, because when it comes to capital budget often take the largest chunk or the lion's share of the budget. And before an amount, it's not just the case where we are showing money just anyhow. There is a due process that must actually be followed before funds and capitals are actually released. Yeah, we've had ministers under this administration. Health is a very, very case in point that raised that concern, Professor Ali Pate, to the fact that the capital component of their budget have not been released fully. We had the Minister of Women Affairs at the time also be able to make that particular complaint. And even the ex-Minister of Finance, Madam Uju Kennedy, also mentioned that particular fact. So the fact that they are not able to get the capital raises, the capital budget, the capital component of the budget needed for their ministry to run. So I think the government needs to do more in that regard. That's what I'm saying. Because if you look at that, let's look at the 2024 budget. We've seen an implementation, a budget performance about 55% to 60% of that is there. Now we have 2025 now, just like I said, 3 budgets anyway. One is simultaneously the actual 2025 budget that's supposed to have expired, long before now, have to be extended by the National Assembly, to be able to allow for some of those capital releases. We have the supplementary budget component of that budget as well as the 2026 budget, which we have not even started scratching the surface of that. So they've tried to actually be as objective as possible to release how funds are being released for the recurrent expenditure. Because if you look at the Ministry of Finance, you will see how funds are actually being released on a monthly basis when it comes to recurrent expenditure. As I said, for recurrent expenditure, how those are actually being released. But for the capital component, I think that is the sticky issue that we need to be able to resolve.
Thank you very much, Fisaya. Fisaya, I want us to take a look at the details where it concerns these palaces and religious institutions. Let's see exactly how much is being spent or how much is being allocated to these institutions here. Now, breakdown here. For mosque-related projects, it's about 6.14 billion naira. For church-related projects, it's about 1.92 billion naira, and the total comes to about 8.05 billion naira. I think there's more breakdown here. Let's take a look at it critically now. Musical and cultural equipment for churches in Bende Federal Constituency, for instance, 1 billion naira was allocated. Solar power installations for mosques in Zamfara North, 1 billion naira. Renovation of community halls and palaces in selected communities in Lagos, 2.661 billion naira. Modernization of furnishing of select national heritage places, 1.54 billion naira. For a person who actually loves the environment, loves heritage, loves Nigeria, I think that these allocations are actually quite relevant. But it's the scale, the amounts, the numbers of MDAs that are getting these allocations and whether they are relevant MDAs that begin to make one wonder. So I'm wondering whether this is we've talked about priority, but I'm wondering what concerns you have looking at who these, what these agencies are that are being allocated these sums and the sheer amount that is being allocated for certain items such as musical instruments, for instance. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this will actually be able to lay credence to what Celestina has to tell you about misplaced priorities. I think when these concerns were actually raised about 3 or 4 days ago, as to how some of these items, what some people actually count as frivolous items anyway, go into the budget and justifications for them. And I think I listened to the Deputy Speaker who provided a kind of a background. Mr. Benkalu provided a very good background for why this is actually needed and why some important government ministries or churches, mosques that are actually related to the government, musical instrument needed to be able to do that, research institutes, some very critical component of our national life. Because he was providing that, maybe it may not be fully justifiable, why it is actually needed for us to be able to have an allocation to palaces, to churches, to mosques. I'm sure you're actually displaying that there. That raises a lot of concern. But don't forget that the budget itself is a compendium of different line items that touches all, the entirety of our life project, the entirety of our life existence, how it concerns us. So we have our traditional institutions, we have our religious institutions that are a critical part of our national life. I think we should be able to remember that particular fact as well. And in as much as we also need them to also be able to contribute to national development, to national priorities, and our collective goal, certain things need to actually be allocated in that particular regard. What I personally may not be able to subscribe to is maybe, providing money for people going to Jerusalem, given to Mecca, all those things. We felt that the government needs to dissociate itself from that. But if you listen to Mr. Benkalu, the Deputy Speaker, provided a very good justification and rationale for why this must actually be done. And I think it is needed as well, because we will say that for national development, as I said, for the collective development or for inclusive-based development, I think that's the word, inclusive-based development or growth that is not just skewed to one section of the population or to one segment of the nation. We need to ensure actually be able to carry everybody along. And that's maybe it's actually the reason. And this is actually a national thing. This has actually been the trajectory right from the time. In terms of, we have states that have the Ministry of Religious Affairs, we have states that have Ministry of Traditional Affairs, and we have the traditional institutions as well. They also play a very, very important role. And it's actually needed. I think I can't be able to give that to the fact that it's actually needed to ensure that we also have, this is a government closer to these are people, these are institutions that are closer to the people. And for the benefit, because that's what Mr. Kalu provided, for the benefit or the dividend of government to be able to get to the bottom of the pyramid.
I want to jump on that, Fisayo, before you go too far. When you say that these are projects that are closest to the people, Mohammed, did I call you any other thing? I'm so sorry. Mohammed, my apologies. Fisayo was our previous guest. So, Mohammed, you talked about the fact that these are projects that are closest to the people. So how about indicators? When the budget year ends, what indicators should we look out for to say that, yes, this budget was implemented, it was well used, and it benefited the people or the constituents?
Okay, so, we have budget performance tracking tools that we actually use. I'll just be able to mention just very few of them. Remember that at the beginning of the year, budget is just a statement is a plan of what you are going to expend, for the next 12 months. Typically, it's the next 12-month period, except in cases like this where we have it extended. Now, what do we say? For example, we allocated a trillion naira to be able to fix this road from this point to this point, for example. We have tracking devices, we have institutions, we have think tanks. In fact, they actually be able to follow, I think one of them is called Follow the Money, where you actually be able to see, are these budgetary implemented? Are these projects, for example, put in the capital? Because the main essence of capital budget, the capital section of the budget, don't forget, is about project delivery, roads, bridges, hospitals, schools, and things like that, in those paraphernalia. Now, what do we be able to check there? We agree that we're going to be able to use this money to do this. Have we used the money for that particular purpose? That's the first question. Has the money been used to be able to implement for this? So there is actually an allocation from Lagos to Ibadan Expressway, for example, $10 billion. Have we allocated that? Has that been done? I think those are what we're able to use. But at the end of the day, we place it on a scale. For another one will actually be salary payments. Has the government been paying salaries as and when due? For example, if government is expected to actually be able to settle their salary scales, do we have shortfalls in terms of meeting up that? So what I want to say is, for budget performance, there have been advanced analytics. We have some we have developed as economists that will actually be able to use to track the money to track the project delivery, to track execution. And that is why at any point in time, we will be able to place a number or to be able to place a performance report to say, this budget, this has actually been the performance. Unfortunately, we have not been able to do that for 2025 yet because it is still running. At least we're hoping that with the new Minister of Finance who came on board and who promised that the residual part of the 2025 budget will be completed perhaps before the end of the third quarter of this year, so that at least we can be able to focus on 2026 budget and see how that will run. But another thing there, which I think Buhari government did, that was also very important, would have been ZBB, maybe zero-based budgeting. Maybe we should be able to revert back to that. Whatever money is not spent in the budget at the end of that year should be returned back to the government purse. Maybe that would go a long way to be able to reflect integrity.
Has that ever happened in Nigeria?
Transparency.
I'm wondering, has that ever happened in Nigeria? Whatever.
Oh yes, remember, so Buhari government introduced ZB, we call it ZBB, zero-based budgeting, which means that whatever is actually not spent at the end of the year, we have the January to December calendar. The Buhari government tried that, how effective that was, and we have come to talk about some of the ministers who spoke vehemently about this. So once you have a January to December, once your budget is not exhausted at the end of the year, you return the remaining amount back to the national coffers, to the CBN. And I'm sure some ministers did that, some ministries did that. So you come back again, you request for another amount, or you'll be able to spill over, carry over, whatever you could not be able to do in the particular year, and then you spill it over to the following year.
All right then.
Well, Mohammed, for a budget, to be created and, having the mosque and the church be under a cocoa institution, it doesn't look right. It feels like something is, trying to be, they're trying to hide something in plain sight or say something. Now, for Christians who go to church, they say it at the altar, the church was built by the tithe of the, the worshippers, and, it was the people in the church that built it. So a lot of people will say, as churches are NGOs and, they don't pay taxes, they take care of their own. And now we're seeing the churches, the palaces, most of them were not named. A lot of people know all the churches. A lot of people will testify the famous ones were built by, the sweat of the people. What will accountability look like for us looking at these budget allocations? We've also seen situations where lawmakers say that, it takes time to implement, the budget. It takes time to get the money. And even when they get the money, the people who are supposed to receive it don't. At what point do we say, you know what, we can track this and say, Nigerians, the government is accountable to us with all this budget flying through?
Okay, thank you, Celestina. And I think these are just two questions, and I will try to be able to react to them. Because first is, yes, there are concerns, as to what concerns government, with faith-based institutions, with traditional institutions, as you have raised. But I think I mentioned at the beginning, and when I listened to the Deputy Speaker trying to provide a justification, for example, for the musical instrument to be bought for that particular church in Abia State, he was actually raising a concern about is a support program for youth orientation and things like that. And things related. Unfortunately, and I think that's actually, which is the thing, Celestina, which I actually be able to agree with, is the fact that how can you track such? The recent budget, the recent tax system tried to be able to, the Harmonized Tax Act that took effect from January this year introduced a very vital thing as well, in terms of reporting councils where churches, mosques, traditional institutions can actually be able to, that are registered, could actually be able to be paying taxes as well to the government. That has actually been generating a lot of debates. It has generated a lot of raw costs, even though that have not been able to see the light at the end of the day. And I think that's actually the major problem. Just like you said, we've seen people who have actually challenged churches, mosques, to also be paying taxes, just that we have everyday Nigerians who go to work every day, who toil every day, paying taxes to the government. Yes, as much as we are able to ask them. But I think the underlying thing as well is we want the dividend of democracy to get to the people. Don't let us forget that. And one of the fastest, the quickest way that people's life can actually be touched, don't forget, also come from religious institutions. This is actually a nation that is bounded by religion, that is actually bounded by culture, that it is a fact, and we cannot be able to dissociate ourselves from that. And maybe another direction that we, instead of just giving the usual cash transfers, Because that's actually that's the justification the Office of Deputy Speaker was actually providing when that was found there. But I think in the area of placing it under a line item that look a bit far-fetched or that created a lot of controversy, I think that is actually the major question. But don't let us forget as well that there are institutional failures, because I'm sure you mentioned at the beginning about PFIPC. It's just, what are the lessons that we will learn? Failures happen. For example, look at the case of the US. Homeland Security in the United States was actually founded because of additional labs during the September 11, 2001 attack. So we have that. The case of that is just a trajectory, it's a learning curve for us. Now we see that now it has been flagged because
Mohammed, when you say learning curve, people will think it's thousands. We're talking about billions here. You know, in Nigeria, when you talk about money, they want to see it. You're talking billions, and in their mind, they're like, we're supposed to have good hospitals, we're supposed to have good schools, good roads. We're not supposed to be going through the flooding that we're going through. But these things happen all the time. Budgets have moved from one year to the other and nothing has happened. So Mohammed, in 30 seconds, just tell us, what do you think the government should do now to be able to save their name? Because right now, Nigerians are not trusting what they're showing us on those budgets.
I think, thank you very much, Celestina, because the major question that we are battling with in this nation is trust issues, which is a fact. In fact, there's a quotient we try to develop about trust equation or trust quotient. But I think the government still needs to be able to come and own up to this responsibility, to the fact that there's actually a mistake in the line item, the way it has actually been done. Because don't forget that the budget, as I said, is a compendium. We're talking about thousands of pages. Yes, you needed to be very meticulous to check every line item, line by line debate. And I think that's exactly where we need to be careful of, where people are not just lazy about. Our National Assembly is there. We have bicameral legislature. They also need to be able to check this to ensure that things like that do not pass through them without doing their due diligence. Because it is only true that if you see that, the office have actually acknowledged that there's actually a problem to the fact that this was actually misplaced under a particular under the Ministry of Agriculture, where it's not supposed to be. This is actually where people that work in the budget office, people that work in the policy center, NIPSS, for example, that work in the budget office of the National Assembly, needed to do more on. I think we need to be able to take them to task for that. And I think I should commend Nigerians, because it is as a result of our eagle-high view that we're able to detect some of these anomalies, some of these challenges that we have, so far in those particular reports.
Mohammed, thank you very much for having this very
thank you very much,
robust conversation on the budget and the concerns that people have had regarding Nigeria's priority. We'll continue to follow the money and see where it goes. Maybe eventually at the end of the budget year, bring you back here again so we can check and balance the books. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mohammed.
Thank you, Celestina, for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All righty, Celestina, let's get to the next conversation here. So the presidency announced an executive order establishing a regulatory framework for virtual assets. It's a move, it says, will strengthen collaboration among financial regulators, protect Nigerians from fraud, and also support responsible innovation. Now, the move was necessitated by a fragmented regulatory environment in which, virtual assets increasingly blur the traditional boundaries between currency, money, commodities, and also securities.
And to address these challenges, the executive order establishes a virtual asset council chaired by the Central Bank of Nigeria, with the Nigeria Revenue Service and the Securities and Exchange Commission Service as vice chairs. The question now is whether these measures will be enough to strengthen oversight and curb illicit financial activities. And joining us this morning to discuss this is Daniel Aremu. He is a technology and robotics researcher and a brand strategist. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. Now, the president has signed an executive order to establish a regulatory framework for virtual assets. For viewers who may not be familiar with this policy, can you break down what this order means for Nigeria's cryptocurrency ecosystem?
All right, thank you. Good morning. Yes, let me go straight to the point. What did the president really sign? Okay, so the president signed an executive order to coordinate the regulation of virtual assets, such as cryptocurrencies. Rather than creating a completely new regulator, the order brings together agencies like the CBN, SEC, and the Nigeria Revenue Service under a coordinated framework to close regulatory gaps, reduce fraud gap, and support responsible innovation. This is what I believe the president just signed.
Okay, so I'm wondering what the signals, what is all the signals, if it signals a shift from whether restriction to regulation. I'm wondering whether it also marks a new phrase for a relationship between regulators and crypto industry. Because the crypto industry is something that most Nigerians are not really expert about. So I'm wondering how this is going to work. If you were to explain it to people, this regulation, how would you put it?
Okay, so I won't say the policy didn't say the cryptocurrencies was legalized. I think the federal government is actually looking into creating how cryptocurrency can be involved in our everyday transaction. And I think this is why they actually brought out these regulations, and they are looking into it. They're actually trying to create like I said, a regulation so that everybody is going to be involved one way or the other.
Daniel, I would like a very interesting breakdown of how cryptocurrency seems to be creeping into our everyday vocabulary when we talk about how we transact here in Nigeria. What are we looking at here? Are we looking at it becoming our new virtual way of transacting? How long before cryptocurrency becomes something as usual, as normal as our virtual way of transacting when it comes to using our bank apps?
Okay. So one of the ways in which cryptocurrency actually works for us as a nation is by creating a faster payment method. Cryptocurrency is very fast, and it is something every sector would actually want to go into. And in the world at the moment, cryptocurrency is actually one of the talking points of currencies. And if Nigeria is actually left out, it is actually going to be bad. I think this is why they are actually bringing it. So faster payments, international transactions for businesses, supply chain tracking, customer loyalty programs, and digital identity um, verification. These are the ways in which they affect businesses. And I think, I'm not sure yet, because there's nothing that is stating that they actually make legalizing it or putting it into play as at now. But I think this is one of the reasons why the regulatory body has been created to look into it, then create a way or regulations in which everybody can take part in this cryptocurrency, because it is one of the talking points of our present generation.
Right. So, Daniel, one of the reasons why this situation has come to the fore is because the government is, putting it side by side with terrorism financing, since, the regular payment is what, we can easily track. Now, would you say if they're now putting this regulation because they think that's where, the financing for terrorism is coming from, do you think it will affect the virtual space and cryptocurrency's economy?
Those concerns are legitimate because every financial system, whether traditional banking or digital assets, can be abused. And a coordinated regulatory framework can help by strengthening the licensing, like using the KYC procedures, anti-money laundering compliance, and monitoring suspicious transactions. I believe this is one of the ways in which they want to be able to track every transaction. At the same time, it is important that regulation remains proportionate. If compliance becomes too expensive or overly restrictive, smaller startups may struggle to compete and innovation could move elsewhere. The challenge is finding the right balance between protecting the public and allowing the legitimate business to grow. I believe with this regulation, they're actually trying to reduce fraud, which most of the terrorists in the country currently are using. So I believe this is one of the reasons why the regulatory body was created.
So on the positive side, would you say that if we do implement this regulation properly, that it will bring more investment into Nigeria? Noting that, like you said, this generation has, taken to cryptocurrency as its own mode of transaction. So what benefits would we have if the implementation of if the regulation was implemented correctly?
With clear regulation generally encourage investment because investors prefer certainty. When businesses know the legal requirements, they are willing to build products, hire employees, and invest for the long term. For Nigeria, this could strengthen sectors such as financial technology, blockchain development, cybersecurity, digital payments, software engineering, compliance, and legal services. It also creates opportunities for young professionals with skills in technology. While regulation alone can't create jobs or opportunities, it can create an environment where innovation and entrepreneurship are more likely to thrive.
Well, Daniel, to be fair, let's just talk basics, right? Nigerians don't believe. When we talk about regulations in Nigeria, especially when it comes to money, we're terrified because we feel like the government is not transparent. I'm also saying we because I'm Nigerian, right? But let me remove myself from the equation. It's there on the internet. There's always, lamenting. Let's even talk about the conversation we had before now, budget. You can see that under a cocoa institution, there's church, there's mosque, there's palaces, and then there's billions allocated to that. How do you think we will trust a regulation for cryptocurrency when we've not fully trusted the one that we can see? How do you think the government would make this regulation transparent enough so that we can believe that truly this is where terrorist financing is coming from? Because we've also seen where they say that it's the people in the community, they eat, right? So you have financing is not just, money, it's also food and stuff. They see it, in those communities happen. So how can we trust them? What process do you think the government should do that will make us trust this new regulation for cryptocurrency?
One thing I actually think, believe that they should do properly is in the coordination. And since they're actually not creating a new body, they are just using all the present bodies we have for our currencies. Since they are using all those bodies, I believe coordination is actually what makes this work better. If they can actually coordinate this regulation in a proper manner, in a proper state, where digital assets, because digital assets cut across several areas, including our financial regulation, security, taxation, cybersecurity, and monetary policy. No single agency can effectively regulate the entire ecosystem alone. The Virtual Asset Council is expected, this is what we as Nigerians are expecting from them, is that they improve communication and policy alignment among agencies so that we Nigerians can actually understand. This reduces duplication, minimizes conflicting regulations, and creates a more predictable environment for businesses and consumers. Effective coordination, as I've said, is essential if Nigeria wants to build a credible and competitive digital asset ecosystem, and if they want us to believe in what they are doing.
Daniel, I want to say thank you very much for having such an interesting conversation with us here on the regulation for these new forms of, transactions. Regulation. Especially where it concerns laundering and other ills in society. Daniel, thank you very much for having this conversation.
Thank you
Continue
so much.
to come to you for more on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We've got more conversation here inside of Breakfast Extra. It might be our very last one. Focus Africa, do stay with us. We'll be back.
Now we've made it to our last big story. Nigeria and Germany are taking steps to deepen their long-standing partnership with renewed commitments to strengthen cooperation in trade, investment, energy, technology, and security. The latest engagements between both countries reflect a shared interest in expanding economic opportunities and addressing common development challenges. Germany remains one of Nigeria's major economic partners in Europe, with collaboration spanning renewable energy, vocational education, manufacturing, and private sector development. This morning, we take a closer look at the future of Nigeria-Germany relations and the opportunities they present. Joining us, as always, is Alexander von Rogen, Global Affairs Analyst. Alexander, good morning.
Good morning, Alexander. Always a pleasure to see you.
Likewise.
Well, Alexander, I think Germany has been a part of Nigeria for so long since our independence. What do you think would be the reason for this renewed push to strengthen our relationships and, and close all the gaps?
Well, let's look what's happening around the world right now. We have a war going on in Iran, and we have President Trump issuing increased tariffs recently this week. I think Germany is both looking to diversify its reliance on business with America. Historically, Germany's relied on pipelines for its fuel. Well, the Russia-Ukraine war has cut that pipeline off, and now it's looking at maritime imports, of which Nigeria has an abundance of. So that's number one. Number two, Nigeria is looking to diversify its reliance on the superpowers. Primarily, it's been China and America, but they want to keep a balance of neutrality there. And I think they're going to be looking to diversify their markets, increase their markets, as well as not the reliance on the two big powers. Germany, by itself, has always been an engineering powerhouse. They make the best automobiles. Their technology is really superior, but then so are their pricing. And I think in this new age of modernization and Africa moving forward, I think they're also discovering that the best price isn't always the best quality. So if we look at the educational crossovers for bilateral trade, which Germany can offer, it could be good for both countries. Also, Germany doesn't have any ulterior motives. They're not looking to build military bases or naval operation or anything else like that. They're primarily focused on trade.
Ron Rugen, thank you very much. I'm wondering what sectors in Nigeria will actually stand the best to benefit from this relationship as Nigeria continues to look for foreign direct investment as against foreign portfolio investments. Will Germany give us that foreign direct investment, do you think? And what sector?
Well, it's already started with Siemens and redesigning the power grid in Nigeria. As we all know, that has been a debacle. Back in, I think, around 2013, Nigeria sought to privatize the industry. Well, it was political cronyism. They broke up the power grid and gave it to politicians that were undercapitalized to maintain it. And the infrastructure was designed to fail. You had multiple points of failure, which collapsed the grid. I think now it's going to be rebuilt and not rely so much on human management, but with artificial intelligence and superior technology, the grid can be, as we call in engineering, a mesh system. So you don't rely on single points of failure, which shut off the entire grid, but rather we have multiple points of power which can cover for each other in the event there is an outage in one area. So that's number one. Then also infrastructure, such as transportation. Historically, there's been some bad investments. The biggest one I can think of is Abuja Rail.
Okay, there are certain interests now from Germany. Germany is seeking to expand its trade, energy, and also technology, also security partnership. But what practical opportunities do you see there present for Nigeria? Apart from energies, which you've just talked about, there's plenty of focus on solar energy or innovations around energies. What other aspects could Nigeria benefit from?
Well, German machinery, they're very strong in the automotive sector as well. And just technology in general. SAP, for example, is the industry standard globally for logistics planning and production. Bilateral education with Germany also serves another purpose. Germany has been plagued with illegal migration and unfettered migration. They want to stabilize that. They feel that by education and bilateral training, they're going to stop a lot of that migration through technology transfer. I'll give you a best example. Nigeria is going to go nuclear. They're going to eventually have small footprint nuclear reactors with non-weaponized uranium. Well, that is high tech. They're preparing the market now with education. They're working with Nigerian universities, doing pilot projects so that when the country is ready for nuclear, which is probably going to be 2035 to 2045, they will actually have the skill sets within the country to run it. And that's what Nigeria is seeking. They want to be not just an exporter of raw materials, but a developer to create the value added within the country and be on par with other countries in the world.
It's a very interesting line you drew there between Nigeria, Germany, and illegal migration. From what you said, I get that you can curb it by going to the source. And I'm looking at this method, which you've just explained here, as against the American method, where it's, well, you can see how stringent that might be. Let's just cut them off. Let's just send them back. And I'm wondering which one plays better. Do you think that method, which you've just explained, would actually be able to curb such a menace as illegal migration?
Well, depending on the country, I mean, we can't, each country has a different dynamic. Maybe there's a dictatorship, maybe there's a need for asylum seekers. You know, this method, what Germany is proposing, is certainly on the more diplomatic side. They're not trying to weaponize visa entry or education or tariffs, for example. Germany has a problem as well with tariffs. I mean, America was their biggest trading partner, as Nigeria is with America. And I think what we're seeing is a trend here globally to diversify and expand markets outside the big two, which are China and Germany, and kind of the countries want to wean themselves off of that dependence. And I think that's a strong move. There's strength in diversity. There's also weakness. It's a balance of how you move forward with.
Well, Alexandra, do you think Nigeria should be concerned as to we lean or we rely so much on foreign investment? Do you think that by now, it's been 60-something years, do you think by now there are some things that Nigeria should have been able to take care of itself? So do you think as a problem, Nigeria should look that, you know, we're leaning a lot on, you know, international investment?
Well, let's look at the elephant in the room. Investment and need for cash runs parallel with a lot of corruption. The bigger the project, the more money there is to kind of skim off the top. And I think that's where the focus has to be to curb that kind of activity and to de-risk investment in Nigeria. I think I attended the recent Africa Forward Summit in Nairobi back in May, and the big discussion was de-risking, and the other aspect of growing Africa, as pointed out by your Mr. Dangote, Africa needs to grow from the bottom up, not from the top down. And if you can de-risk the investment risk in a country, you're going to attract that private capital, which is the driving force in an economy. You can't just rely on government-to-government contracts. They're mismanaged. They open the door for corruption, more corruption, and it's not the most efficient way to go. But you have to have a plan to move forward and to interconnecting these individual endeavors.
So let's say trade versus, what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm trying to see which one benefits Nigeria better, whether it's direct investment inside of Nigeria or transference of technology. Which do you think Nigeria would benefit more? Because Germany is known very much for its big technological advancements and efforts that it's making. Do you think if they invested here, public-private partnerships, do you think that would fare better for Nigeria than if it was a total transfer of maybe knowledge, information, training when it comes to technology?
Well, it's a combination of both. Here's the best example. Give a farmhand a hammer and a wrench and tell him to repair your Ferrari. You know what the outcome's going to be. It'll be disaster. Educate that farmhand on the mechanics of a Ferrari engine and how to fine-tune it, because it's a high-end piece of machinery. Now you have a market with the skill sets that can actually run it. What's the sense of having high technology if it's going to collapse within the country because the skill sets aren't there to efficiently operate it. I made that comparison on the nuclear component. Nuclear is a very serious industry, and it can be very hazardous if it's not managed properly with safety and all the other issues around the safe operation. So education becomes the catalyst to an improved functioning society. And you can't have one without the other. It's why we send soldiers to boot camp.
But I see a problem here. I see a problem here, Alexander, because we've seen this happen before in Africa, where you educate that farmhand. The farmhand knows how to fine-tune a Ferrari, and then before you know it, he's off to England next week. So how do we curb that problem to keep that knowledge here in Nigeria without losing it at the end of the day?
You're absolutely right. That brain drain has been happening, but then I think what you're going to see in Africa with the dynamics of the world changing right now, you're going to see more forward movement in Africa in the next 3 years than you've had in the last 300. Tech hubs are being built in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya. The Gen Z population has been a lot more vigilant now because they're connected to the internet, and they're not allowing the old elites to run the countries into the ground anymore. They're rebelling, as we've seen in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. Entire countries have actually been overthrown by them, Madagascar, Nepal. So the politicians are beginning to realize this. They're either, give in or give up. And the force and the pressure for this dynamic shift and change in management is quite apparent now. And also the political tension globally. Africa's rich in abundance in raw materials. Everyone around the world wants to exploit that, but that balance of trade also has to be established. It's got to be fair to both sides. And it's an evolution. You can't just turn a switch and go from one to the other overnight. It's you crawl before you walk before you run. And with that, as you mentioned earlier, the education process has to be part of it. And you got to curb it because you can't have constant brain drain. You can't be training locals that are trained to emigrate to the West because now they have skill sets that they can make more money in the West. So wage rates are also going to have to go up in Africa.
Right. Now, talking Africa, now given the tension in Nigeria and then ECOWAS, would you say that, the deepening ties with Europe comes at the cost of investing, more in West Africa?
Well, Europe wants to invest in wherever it makes sense. You touched on something very interesting here, ECOWAS. Let's look at the Sahel. Let's look at the separation of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. What was the catalyst to that happening? They were partnered with France, which was not doing a great job on protecting their citizens from terrorist insurgencies. So they had 3 coups that were initiated not to profiteer, but to protect the people. There was a huge vacuum there. If we look at what Captain Traoré is doing in Burkina Faso and rebuilding the country, as a dictator, I might add, he's exposing the corruption in the rest of Africa. He's changing the model, and it's an embarrassment. But I wish him the best luck, because if the gentleman has integrity and he's doing it for the people, he's a trendsetter now, and I think the rest of Africa is now looking at that. That's one of the catalysts to change throughout Africa, I believe.
But Alexander, let's go on a short break. When we return, we have a question or two to ask before we round up this conversation. Please don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. We're still having a chat with Alexander Van Rogen as we discuss Nigeria-Germany relations here on Focus Africa inside of Breakfast Extra. Van Rogen, thank you for keeping with us. I've got one final question for you, and I'm wondering what you think about this. When we talk about investments in Nigeria, in Africa, to zoom out a bit, But particularly here in Nigeria, there's always one thing that seems to come up. It's the regular ailment that Nigeria has, and I'm talking about corruption. And I'm wondering to what extent you see or foresee that that would affect the relationship that we have with Germany going forward. How best can Nigeria maximize the potential of this relationship, noting that it carries that monkey on its back?
Well, I think you struck the nail on the head. If Nigeria doesn't do something to curb that issue, whether it's through punitive actions within the country in curbing corruptive activities and fraud, the Germans are very pragmatic. They're very matter of fact. They like good contracts. They like to deliver on time. They like to give precision. If that's disrupted by a constant claims for additional payments or under the table payments, it will disrupt that business. They're very high in integrity when it comes to that sort of thing. Other nations, they behave a little differently, and that, I think, perpetuates the corruption. I can use China and India as an example. So, you know, how to get there? You have to solve a problem, you've got to go to the source, and you've got to curb that for the betterment of the country. That would mean maybe punitive punishment for officials that use their position of power to compromise, say, an infrastructure deal for the country, for the citizens of that country. I think, and then also let that flow down to the courts, that the judges can't be corrupted in protecting those individuals that are defrauding the country. It's a systemic problem that has to be curbed, and I think President Tinubu's got certainly a lot on his plate.
Well, Van Rugen, I'm also wondering how much speed this would be executed with, whenever or whatever form we choose to exercise this partnership. The relationship with China has been great for Nigeria, but we've seen how much time it's taken it to develop, especially infrastructure like roads, bridges, or railway, for instance. The railway we have here in Lagos, the new ones took almost 10, perhaps maybe even 15 years to come to completion. And I'm wondering whether this relationship would also give us such an instance where we have these development partnerships that take years, that extend into different administrations, and in itself also has a way of kind of like mitigating against the process. But what do you think? How much speed, speaking of German efficiency, do you think this relationship can go with?
I think the way to adopt it would be for the government to say, all right, we're going to give you a sovereign guarantee for investment in our country. And that guarantee is going to include a free path to moving forward and eliminate most of those obstacles. The obstacles are usually from junior positioned people in power, local governments, municipality, that tend to come with their hand out, and they block a deal from moving forward. And it's not just in Nigeria, that's typical throughout Africa. It's the way the system has evolved from colonial times, and it's got to stop. We're in a new era now, and we have examples, which I put out a few minutes ago, talking about, say, Captain Traore in Burkina Faso. He's nationalized building highways, boosting agricultural production, monetizing gold to back up their currency. He's doing all the right things, and it's an embarrassment to countries that aren't adapting as quickly. And the citizens are waking up, and they're seeing it. So there's a forced evolution going on here in Africa. And I think it'll be the catalyst to a much more accelerated change, because it has to happen. If you want a future for the country, which obviously the people do, and they have a voice, and they're starting to be heard.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Alexander Varungan, for joining us and having these conversations. Of course, we'll follow up and see what these next investments says for Nigeria. Thank you so much, Alexander.
Thank you.
My pleasure as always. Good to be here.
Great.
Now, as Nigeria seeks to attract more foreign investment and diversify its economy, many believe stronger partnerships with countries like Germany, who has been here 3 days after our independence, could play a key role in driving growth and innovation. But as global partnerships continue to evolve, the focus will be on turning diplomatic commitments into tangible benefits of businesses, communities, and citizens in both countries.
Yes, indeed. And at that note, we are... No, not yet.
No, wait, now I want to shake you first.
Thank you.
So what does this mean? Meaning I'm in agreement with you.
If
I don't follow up.
Yes, I remind you. In any case, it's been a very interesting show. Thank you for the monologue from this morning. What particular news bits are you looking forward to following through the week this week?
The speedboat.
The speedboat one?
Yes.
That's for Jigawa State?
Yes, for Jigawa State, because, you know, sometimes we forget that these things have been happening before they came to the fore. You know, the governor went to the offices, the civil officers were not there, but it has been happening for years.
So
because
you want to have particular interest and follow up with that story?
I want to, because these communities, you could hear what Enoch said. They say they don't want anything from the government.
Yeah, it's
they
exhaustion.
They just want to be in peace. So those are makeshift, you know, boats for them to just go farm and eat. They're not asking you for a railway. They're not asking you for buses. They're not asking you for palliatives. The best we can do for the people we're leading is to lead them to the right path. It just seems like we're having so much damage come from the north, and it's heartbreaking. It's too much to watch. It's too much to see. We've seen the Osu. So again, I like the fact that when we're talking about all of this, it's not just about the north anymore. It's Nigerians. It's Osu, it's Jigawa, it's Plateau State, it's Oyo, it's everywhere, it's Lagos, it's everywhere. And I just feel like the leaders need to wake up and just see, like MD would say, feel the pulse of the people.
Feel the pulse of the people.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. What I see is the PFIPC investigations by the ICPC begin to take a backseat this week. I would like to follow that one, but I know that it's going to become less and less announced. And
then churches are under Cocoa institution.
You're digging this but that's what I want to keep my eye on. And I'm wondering what our guests, or rather what our viewers, would be interested in through the week. But I always say, keep one matter on the front burner always, because that's the way we begin to lose our count on accountability, because these stories keep coming up every single day. We're like, okay, let's on to the next one. Doesn't work that way. Keep something on your burner always. Thank you very much for starting the week with us here for a Sunday edition. And of course, we're looking forward to perhaps also ending it with you on Saturday when we return. But between now and then,
you would have Benga Olive and Joe.
For Breakfast Central, join them tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. bright and early, all 5 days until we return on Breakfast Extra.
And then you see Mazino tonight.